Was E3 2019 let down by the distinct lack of gameplay on offer? Here to discuss it with me today is Mr. Henry Cooper.
Hello.
My name is Gareth Evans. Let's get stuck into this. Now, this is a discussion that we've been having around the office, and then today we saw an article on VG247 by author Jeremy Peel with the title, "Developers Don't Want to Show Gameplay at E3 Anymore, and Who Can Blame Them?" And as a brief overview of what is discussed in the article, firstly, he goes into detail that there's not a lot of gameplay shown off at this year's E3, with Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII and Watch Dogs Legion being the exceptions. But why exactly are they not showing off gameplay? One example which was used was the original Watch Dogs E3 demo, which was then compared to the final release, and in the article it says that people suggested that there was a graphical downgrade in the demo because it just didn't run. I mean, there's videos, Digital Foundry did a video which I watched recently, and they're the tech experts, right? They looked at it and they compared it on the highest end PC, the final game versus the E3 demo, and it still couldn't achieve it at the time, and that was a few years ago now. So if people like Digital Foundry, who are a very reputable branch of Eurogamer themselves, are making those conclusions, then
actual technical experts who that's their entire job is to explain the technical side of the games industry.
Yeah, not just raging YouTubers trying to make clicks.
Exactly. They are paid to do it exclusively.
And because of the furore caused, Ubisoft put out a statement saying, "The notion we would actively downgrade quality is contrary to everything we've set out to achieve." I mean, what did you set out to achieve? Why didn't you?
Yeah, then why did you do it?
Why did you actually do it?
If you weren't trying to achieve it, why did you do it? You failed in your goal.
And then the article goes on to say that this contributed to the poor reception of the game at the time and maybe affected the sales of the sequel itself. And the quote from the article reads like this: "Since then, graphical downgrade videos have become a thriving subgenre on YouTube, targeting huge games like Anthem, The Division, and The Witcher 3. They feed into a growing suspicion of game studios, which paints developers as liars out to deliberately mislead gamers in pursuit of greater profits." Now, this is very black and white.
Yes,
okay?
very much so.
I mean, there's one thing YouTube is keeping people honest, but he's slightly more cynical in this. He believes that we as in the YouTube community are painting developers as liars who deliberately mislead gamers in pursuit of greater profits.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is that what we do?
That comment feels very biting against YouTubers, saying all YouTubers who make these graphical downgrade things are just painting devs as the bad guy, when I definitely think there are some people who do that, but I don't think it's the case for the majority at all. I think most people, a lot of channels who do very similar things to us, it's about honesty and showing what's really going on in these trailers and stuff, because everyone sees through the bells and whistles and, oh, it's very shiny. What's the real grit? What's the actual game? I don't want to be lied to. Don't want to be deceived by manipulative marketing.
I think there is a case where companies do deliberately mislead gamers. There are companies who do that. However, there are companies who don't deliberately mislead, who might just change their minds on a concept in the game, or decide that something isn't a right fit for the game, or decide that the limitations of the hardware just doesn't facilitate the vision that they've got for the game. Anyway, more on that in just a second. The article goes on, gameplay demos at events like E3 are subject to change. They're often built as vertical slices. Now, this is a concept which I first did when I read the Jason Schreier book. Now, a vertical slice, think of it like a cake, right? Many different layers, and a vertical slice is a portion of the game which acts as a proof of concept. So it's a final version of an early concept, if that makes sense. And this is supposed to be representative of what the game is going to ship like, but it's in a very early stage of development.
It's a draft.
It's more than a draft. It's representing the final version of the game in a draft.
It's your final draft before you publish the proper version, when you fully proofread it.
It's almost a contradiction in terms, right? It's very weird because it has to look, it has to feel, it has to play like the final game before you've even decided what's going to be in the final game.
It's weird.
So this is what the vertical slice is, and this is what it's referred to, and it's used as, like I said, proof of concept for fundraising and to get investors involved, where it might be a crowdfunded thing or something like that, or get other people involved, excited about the project that they're working on, just to continue. I mean, some developers in the mid-tier range might use these to continue funding the game in order to get it delivered, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to get it funded. So vertical slices are an important part of the industry. However, it leaves this type of thing leaves them to sometimes overpromise and sometimes deliver a concept for a game that can never be realized.
These E3 events, they're not originally supposed to be marketing events. They're just to showcase new stuff, new tech, new announcements. But they've become, as time has moved on, they've become more towards marketing tools and be like, let's just throw out as many trailers and make things look as pretty so we can sell, rather than showing new innovations as in the same way that they used to.
But however, vertical slices aren't always a bad thing. Animation director on Watch Dogs Legion, Colin Graham, says a lot of developers don't like to do E3 demos because they take a lot of time in production, which is the point we'll get onto in a second. But it came at a really good time for us because it helped us say that's what we're going to make. So it helped Ubisoft lock down the feel of the game with Watch Dogs. Preparing for an E3 showing is a lot of work. There was an example of it in the Raising Kratos documentary with God of War, where Corey Barlog was saying how much effort and time goes into showing at E3. This one demo, this one chance you've got to impress people, and there's a crunch involved in that. Is getting prepared for that one show, and it can make or break your game. Think of games like No Man's Sky, came out of nowhere. All right, this was way before launch, way before all the controversy around in what state it released, but that was one of the best games shown because it had a decent showing. Again, I guess that's another example of what it could be described as mis-selling, overselling a game because of a trailer showing off something more than the final game actually delivered.
These vertical slices, they're what they're aiming for, and they almost never actually reach it due to countless reasons. Run out of time, run out of money, whatever. But the honesty is what I think all gamers want, because it's fine if you don't quite reach it. Just be honest and say why. Don't pretend that you are going to get this fancy stuff that was shown off in the trailer, but then in reality you're actually getting something that's just not the same.
Yeah, so that, I guess that's as part of the reason why. I mean, it's got a point with this article. I think as part of the reason why. I mean, I'd be scared of being called out if I was about to lie to people too. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like, who shouldn't fear that? Like, obviously these devs are wary of them putting out a version of a game, like a glorified, shiny version, a concept of the game that they're never going to achieve. But like, who wouldn't? So this is why they're relying on the cinematic type trailers this year, and a lot of people are disappointed with that. We want gameplay, damn it. But do they appreciate how much work is involved in that gameplay and how much pressure that puts on the development team?
Yeah, and there's a lot of risk putting out the gameplay, because the author of this article makes an interesting point about a lot of developers almost being scared of their audience. And I absolutely feel like that's a thing, and I'm sad that it is, because you should be at a position where you're confident in what you're doing, you're happy to be creating. But because we're in an age of outrage where everything that happens, someone's screaming about it on the internet, no one wants that. It's not nice to feel. On the other side, gameplay is such a massively important marketing tool. As soon as people see it, you know, okay, this is at least what the game is supposed to be, what it looks like it should be.
But at the same time, if you're being honest with your games, if you're being honest with, if you're not trying to mislead, I mean, you shouldn't fear people criticizing you, because you can just be honest and say, well, this is, not enough developers are open and honest about the process of creating a game and how things can change in the process.
Through fear of backlash.
But people have to make a distinction between companies trying to deliberately mislead you in order to create hype for a game, versus when companies decide to take something out of a game that doesn't work, or having to remove something else because of other constraints. You have to make that difference. There's nuance to this issue. It's not everyone being greedy because they decided that a gameplay feature doesn't work with all the other mechanics in the game or something, making a creative decision or being bound by certain limitations. That means that the game creators can't achieve what they initially set out to achieve. So you shouldn't tar them with the same brush as people who are trying to deliberately mislead you to sell a game.
Yeah, a really good example of a game that's accused of a downgrade but in reality wasn't was Spider-Man on PS4. There was the whole Puddlegate thing, which was completely laughable because that wasn't...
People got outraged by that, right?
Yeah, it wasn't really a downgrade. They'd just changed it. Just a change. It's not due to like lack of resources or whatever. They just made a decision. Or like the way they designed his suit, because in the early trailers it was a bit more glossy, but then they decided they didn't like the look of it because it looked wet and it just didn't look right. So they changed the texture of the material because they thought it looked better.
And then there's a question of where the line is with what is acceptable for you to show off. Can you show off high-end PC footage for a game which will never achieve those graphics on, say, a PS4, for example? So
exactly.
Is that over-promising technically? If you can achieve those really, really really high-end, like $5 million PC hardware type of graphics, you're never ever going to pay that much money for a rig that can run the game the way it looks like that, but it's technically achievable if you've got that money, when most players are going to be playing it on a console which can never achieve anything like that. Is that mis-selling? It's kind of a grey area question, really.
Again, I think it needs to come down to the transparency in telling viewers what they're playing it on, because often if there's interviews or journalists, they'll say, oh, I played it on this, but generally in these showcases you have no idea what kind of equipment they're running on.
Yeah, transparency is key.
Yeah, that's what it all comes down to.
I think a great example was CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk gameplay demo from last year.
We can't get through an E3 2019 without sucking their dick.
Yeah, obviously. But, they're a reason why we hail them as one of the best in the industry, because, they do things right. And it does say that throughout the whole of the demo, it says this is early footage and it's like anything in this demo is likely to change, right? It says
the footage from last year, it's like right across the top. It's like, this is a work in progress. The narrator says it's a work in progress.
Likely to change, yeah. And that has to be disclosed, right? People have to understand that and not be done like Anthem did it, because these are the worst types of gameplay footage. Like, who wants gameplay when it's done like the Anthem did, when it's like fake gameplays talking with one another,
actors saying gonna go to Bravo 6 or whatever. It's like, no you're not. You're gonna fly over there and say some spew.
It's those type of gameplay trailers that are the worst. They are really the worst, because not only are they faked gameplay because people are actually playing them, they're just like narrating over after the fact, but the game itself looked nothing like that, right?
Yeah, they
nothing
changed
like that.
So much about it, because and I'm sure most people are aware of the Jason Schreier article by now. They didn't even know what they were doing at that point. They didn't even have a name until like the week before. They didn't know what the name meant.
So if people get outraged that not enough gameplay videos, would you prefer that? Would you prefer those types of gameplay videos, or would you prefer these developers have the time and space to work on their game rather than be crunched towards the E3 demo? I don't know. There's another question out there. So we asked you guys on Twitter questions regarding this topic to see what you guys thought, and at Pretty Bad Tweets is the Twitter handle if you guys want to join in with the conversation. And the first question: did you find E3 disappointing due to a lack of gameplay shown this year? And 55% of the 146 votes said yes, need more gameplay. So a vast majority of people said they need more gameplay. 18% said no, E3 was awesome anyway. 16% said maybe, I guess, I don't know. And then 11% said I'm dumb, show me the results. So I mean, that's telling itself. 55% found E3 disappointing due to a lack of gameplay on show. So that is notable. I mean, but again, what would you prefer? The fake gameplay, to put people under pressure, take them off developing the game in order to create this vertical slice, which will maybe even set back the game a couple of months because they're spending 2 months on this proof of concept, which might not even end up like the final game.
So I quite like CG trailers because they're just short films. They're usually quite entertaining. Well, unless they just show like random images or whatever. But often there's a little bit of actions, like a bit of voiceover, a bit of story, whatever. But I do prefer gameplay, and that's what will really put a game on my radar. If I see gameplay, then I'll be aware.
So the other part of the poll the question was gameplay demos at E3 are fill in the blanks, and 57% voted for what I get excited for. Only 5% selected too much hard work for the devs. 20% said take it or leave it. 18% said I'm dumb, show me the results. So this is very notable for me, and this is the reason I asked this question, whether people appreciate how much hard work it actually is for the devs to put these things together. Only 5% of the 116 votes, which is just 6 people? 6 people of the 116 who voted said it's too much hard work for the devs. Gameplay demos at E3 are too much hard work for the devs. So I guess that an indication of lack of empathy for the devs, sympathy, or a lack of understanding of what the devs are going through, right? Because it is a lot of work.
It's so much work, and I think so many people don't quite understand that. They just like, you've got a job to do, give me the product, I need it now, inject it into my eyeballs. But I don't necessarily think that everyone who didn't vote for that one in the poll has a complete lack of empathy, because the too much hard work for devs, it's gonna be hard work, but I would still rather have it than not have it. But I don't want you to tear your lives apart and make a worse game altogether and hurt yourself doing it.
So there you go. And also we're going to read out a few of the comments that were left underneath the tweets. So first up, Sergio Existo says putting together E3 gameplay demos is quite a large task on top of the work of actually making a game. A game would potentially be better the less gameplay demos are created, as more time is spent improving the game rather than work working on demos, which is a point that we've already touched on, but is it indicative of people who do kind of understand that a lot of work goes into the games?
Yeah, so that's kind of saying, why waste time on the gameplay demo when you could spend that time making the game itself better? I do get that, but demos like this are such powerful marketing tools, and if they didn't show them, the game's probably not going to sell that well, and they need their money to be able to make the game, so it's a tricky one. So next up is from Martin Tomlinson at Emperor_G. As nice as the demo is, after reading at Jason Schreier's book Blood, Sweat and Pixels, it's so easy to see why developers go for CGI trailers over actual gameplay. E3 is crunch time. Then you have all the hassle and supposed controversy over downgrading graphics / missing features, etc. Now this is a lot more sympathetic after Jason Schreier's book, which was a really good insight into the industry, so I'm told. I haven't actually read it.
Oh, it definitely is.
I definitely want to give it a look.
It's very good. It's well worth reading because, I mean, very seldom do we consider the perspective of the game developers when we're getting upset about something, and it's part of the story. And they never come out and they say these are the troubles that we're having, these are the issues. Like the one development team that do it really well are Creative Assembly. They always, if there's ever a delay in the games, they'll always say, well, we're having problems patching this game, we're having problems with technical issues, and they go into detail about the technical issues that are having. It goes way over my head, but at least I know that there's something behind it, and it's not just them just making decisions just to spite us.
Yeah, I think that a lot of developers fear backlash from whenever they make any changes or updates like that, because a lot of people will just scream at them, jump down their throats on Twitter and everything. But I think there's a bit of give on both sides. If the developers can be more confident and more transparent, but then also fans and players can be a bit more understanding and lenient, and together everything will be much nicer.
We can all hold hands and
gaming utopia. Give devs a chance.
Skip into the horizon. And the very last question I'm going to read today, because we're running out of bit of time a little bit. Jamie C says, it should center around the gameplay, seeing as that's what we buy games for. These super shiny CGI traders are shite, and we've seen too many lies over the years to take them with any more than a pinch of salt. It's like people see them and forget only last year we had Fallout 76. So we're the opposite spectrum of opinion here with Jamie, and he thinks that the CGI trailers are a load of crap and we should see more gameplay because that's what we want. I mean, obviously people are entitled to their opinions, so it's just representative of how people feel, I guess. Yeah,
very much of the opinion is gameplay or nothing there, and that's a fine opinion, but as I said earlier, I don't mind the shiny CGI ones so long as I do get gameplay as well at some point.
So there you have it, an interesting discussion nonetheless. Let us know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button, the bell button if you want to be notified when we release these videos. If you want to support the content, head over to patreon.com/prettygoodgaming, and on behalf of Henry and I, we will see you again next time.